It's our favourite time of the week to talk to our favourite person in the world, the wonderful Megyn Kelly. She still has that intergalactic glow. Lovely to see you, mate.
Great to be here. You always give me the nicest welcomes.
Now, one thing that I don't think any American has regret when it comes to the last election was having a president that is hardcore about illegal immigration. In the 4 years of Biden, 9 million people wandered into the country. And the worst of those elements, the ones who have gone on to commit crimes, are the ones that they are trying to boot out right now. But no, the Democrats, rather than learning this lesson, are deciding to storm some of the detention centres where these people are being kept.
Who knows? Their priorities are so backward. I've really stopped trying to figure them out, but they just constantly make the wrong decisions. I mean, it's like, it's like you're a dad. I'm a mom. You raise your kids. You try to give them like an ethical framework from which they can make future decisions because you won't be around to advise on every single one. Everything went wrong with these Democrats. I don't know. I guess their parents had the wrong ethical framework, too, because they make all the wrong decisions. Let's prioritize skin color. Let's really focus on genitalia and how it differentiates us or doesn't. Let's prioritize, I don't know, one's sexual preferences as the most important thing about them. And let's take hardened gang members, make them leftist poster boys, or any random illegal who's set for deportation, and not only add them to our list of poster boys, but get in physical confrontations and altercations with law enforcement, who, by the way, are running high right now in the opinion polls, like higher than they have in many years. America is ready for law enforcement to return in full. Now's really not the best time to pick a fist fight with an ICE agent, but that's what these Congresswomen and men did, and the mayor of Newark, because they think that's noble. And they also love to see their faces on television because literally no one is interested in them on a natural basis. Like no one would be covering any one of them. I did not know. I've never heard LaMonica's name before, and I guarantee you I will never hear it again. But she's in the news for a day because she decided to, it looks like, assault a bunch of ICE agents while throwing down over the illegals in a detention facility. Hope that works out for you.
But also it's the sheer stupidity of the politics. Now, let's imagine, if you take the Democratic view, that Trump is now a diminished figure after he was elected. And of course, we know that's rubbish. Every single poll says that if you enter the country illegally, ta-da, you should be booted out of the country. But these idiots are doubling down. Why are they trying to win over the bubble they already own and the one that got it so wrong with Kamala in November?
They are all looking for their civil rights moment. I mean, they really do look on, people like John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, God rest him, and they want their good trouble moment. They're very sad that they missed the actual civil rights movement, that they missed the Jim Crow era. I really think some of them would have preferred to live then just so they could lean into their own perceived nobility and fight for what's right. Newsflash, the Democrats were on the wrong side of that. Sorry, but it's true. They were on the wrong side of race issues always, literally for their entire history up to right this moment. They've been on the wrong side. So they try to see that kind of injustice in everything. I mean, including something like this. And they try to demonize President Trump in the way you could have demonized a racist back in those days, whatever he says, innocuous stuff that means absolutely nothing racial. They racialize it and pin their own meanings on it. They take them blatantly out of context, even as you know, like with the both sides thing, good people on both sides, just because they cannot stick to reality and make their arguments. They have got to veer or they know their arguments will fall apart. Not everybody sees him or the world through their weird bent prism. So they continue to do it. And all I can guess is that they need it. They need to feel like they matter, whether it's the racial obsession or the gender obsession or like this kind of behavior where you have a very popular president, but you style yourself as like his main foe. You go and you throw down over extremely unpopular people, and then you try to make those people into like blacks in the 1940s in America or 50s versus hardened gang members who are illegals who have actually hurt a bunch of women, children, and men in this country and are rightfully being shipped back to their homes. Like, there is no equivalence between these two people at all. And not for nothing, But they're treating these people in these detention facilities like they've had no due process. And they're pretending that they're entitled to the same due process anyone, illegal or not, would receive in America if they were accused of a crime. But when determining whether they need to be deported, that standard of due process is much lower, much lower. But they're, all of this is like a pretend act. It's like make believe with children. And I think it's like one of those things when they're so dumb, they can't even foresee that we're going to see through their stupidity. There's like an assumption that everyone is as dumb as they are. So it's kind of amusing, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, to watch them behave this way.
Now, President Trump is on his first international tour. We learned that Qatar, a very complicated country, but one that I've been deeply critical of when it comes to its role in hiding the leaders of Hamas, but also its role in the way that it ran its Football World Cup. 4,000 people died in oppressive working conditions, so I'm no fan of the government of Qatar. But Qatar also has an airline, and that airline wants to curry favour. So guess what? They have given one of their planes worth $400 million to President Trump, while the current Air Force One is either clapped out and doesn't get used, or it's used as some sort of a spare aircraft. This seems ridiculous that he's even thinking about it, but what do you think of a gift that he probably shouldn't be taking?
I know. No, I wouldn't. And I don't love this decision by the president, though I'm not totally convinced it's a constitutional violation, but it might be. I want to look into the legal research more. But we have a clause in our Constitution called the Emoluments Clause, which says if you're in a position of public trust, you're not allowed to accept a gift or an emolument, which is basically a fee for a service. So the way he's getting around this is saying it's not a gift to me, it's a gift to the Pentagon. And then when the Pentagon's done with it, it's going to go to the Trump Presidential Library. And he's saying it's not an emolument because I'm not performing a service for this. Qatar is getting nothing. And of course, many people are like, oh, no. Qatar is expecting something. They don't give the $400 million airplane away for freezies, expecting nothing in return. And Trump just kind of says, no, you're wrong. I also believe Qatar is going to want something in return. I don't want to be in their debt. I know it's $400 million that we now don't have to spend. I don't really care. I kind of feel like, is Air Force One in its current form so dilapidated that he can't fly around in it for another 3 years? Because I didn't hear that. I haven't heard that from like the Biden people. I'm not sure. I realize Trump's got higher standards, but I don't like owing Qatar anything, to be honest. But I'm just not sure. The fact that they're not giving it to him directly, because originally the speculation was that they were giving it to him, well, giving it whatever to the government during his term. And then when he left, he'd take it. And then it would wind up in his library. That would be a deep problem. That's a hard no. But this business of it's never going to be directly to him and he's only going to be able to use it when he's president and possibly his successor will be able to use it too. You're getting closer to within the lines there. But no, I don't love it.
And the idea that the President of the United States is going to fly around in the plane that's been made by a foreign government, especially a potentially hostile one, is, how do they say it on the left? Deeply problematic.
No, and it's a humiliation for Boeing. Boeing has just been taking it on the chin over and over these days. But we contracted the government with Boeing during Trump's first term to make two versions of Air Force One. Apparently, there are two planes that go as Air Force One. And we committed to a multi-billion-dollar deal. And they were supposed to have these turned around. Well, here we are 10 years later, well past the deadline. They're billions over budget. The planes are not done. And they told President Trump they won't be done until 2035 at the earliest. That means it's not only will Trump not see it, his successor might not see it. So it is ridiculous. And I think that we should be suing Boeing for all it's worth. So for the return of all of that taxpayer money. And honestly, I don't even know what Boeing's future looks like at this point. It's just every story you hear about it is a disaster.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
Unfortunately, we're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, it's the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done. The question is he a criminal? You know, is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law. I actually think it's going to be pretty easy, but I can see what the defense is doing here, trying to say, all right, he has these, quote, freak-offs, you know, weird, kinky group sex in Hollywood. That's not an illegal thing. It happens all the time. If you don't have the consent of the women or the men, as the case may be, it is illegal. But okay, we're going to argue over whether they were willing participants. It's almost like a Harvey Weinstein situation where he's going to say they willingly took drugs and willingly participated in these things. And they're going to say, absolutely not. He drugged me against my will. Maybe there were drugs in that baby oil, maybe in another way, but I definitely didn't consent to being drugged or to being raped or sodomized by P. Diddy. And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have to sit on that witness stand across from someone who can buy and sell their whole families, who is accused of behaving violent in the past toward both male and female adversaries or so-called friends who ticked him off. You know, he allegedly firebombed this one rapper's car for allegedly being interested in the same woman. There are questions about whether he's potentially done worse than that to others. And these young women with no power and no money who could put him behind bars for the rest of his life have to sit there, look him in the eye and say what he did to them. Now, that's going to be a very tall order. There's already been a question about whether one has bailed. They couldn't find this one witness late last week, and the prosecution wasn't sure whether she'd left, pieced out. And even if they don't piece out, will they stick by their stories on the stand? It's a very, very tall order.